For 5 years, Orlando Brown didn't have his daughter. She was in the foster care system living with 3 different families while her father worked to get himself and his life back together. Now she's with him full time, traveling everywhere he goes, and Brown says the experience has changed practically everything about who he is. Here's what he shared about that journey and the years of struggle that came before it. Most people who recognize Orlando Brown know him first as Eddie Thomas, the wisecracking best friend on Disney Channel's That's So Raven, a role that made him a fixture of early 2000s kids television. But the years after that show ended told a much harder story. Brown has spent over a decade cycling through very public struggles, arrests connected to domestic violence and drug possession, stretches of homelessness, and mental health crises that played out, at times in front of cameras. He's spoken candidly in past interviews about experimenting with crystal meth and other substances, describing a period where he says he genuinely didn't understand what he was doing to himself. It's the kind of history that makes this next chapter land differently. Speaking with Revolt, Brown was direct about where things stood just a few years ago. 5 years ago, he said, he didn't have his daughter. She was in the foster system. He described putting in real work to change that, using blunt language to describe just how badly he'd wanted her out of what he called an unacceptable situation. He didn't go into the specific circumstances that led to her being placed in foster care, but the relief in how he talked about getting her back was unmistakable. Since regaining custody, Brown says his daughter goes virtually everywhere with him. It's reshaped his day-to-day life in ways that are equal parts demanding and rewarding. He talked about how much harder ordinary things like traveling become when you're also trying to guide a young child through a very different lifestyle than what she's used to. But he was clear that the difficulty comes with real joy attached to it, describing the whole experience, even on its hardest days, as fun. Part of what makes this chapter complicated is something Brown addressed with real honesty. His daughter spent those 5 years being raised by 3 different families, and she came back to him with habits and traits shaped by people and environments he wasn't part of, rather than expecting her to simply fall in line with his household. Brown said he sees it as his responsibility to understand who she's become during the time they were apart. He put it simply, she's his daughter, she looks just like him, and figuring out who she is now is on him. Not her. A lighter moment connected to this new chapter went viral recently, while Brown's daughter was at Ray J's boxing match against her father. Singer Brandy shared a sweet exchange with the young girl, who didn't initially believe that Brandy had played Cinderella in Disney's 1997 live-action film. Brandy settled the debate the only way that made sense. She sang "In My Own Little Corner," the ballad she performed in the movie, right there on the spot. It's a small, warm moment, but for a family that's been through this much. It's the kind of ordinary childhood memory that wasn't guaranteed that Orlando Brown's story hasn't been a simple one, and he's never really tried to hide that. What he's sharing now is a different chapter, one where the work he put in actually led somewhere, and where a daughter who spent 5 years moving between other families is now just a kid at her dad's side. Learning the words to a Disney song from a family friend at a boxing match, it's not a finished story, but for Brown, it's clearly one worth telling out loud.